Hell of a thing. Chief Justice Berger, back in the day, actually said the Second Amendment is a fraud. Republican conservative guy said this. Here it is.
If I were writing the Bill of Rights now, there wouldn't be any such thing as the Second Amendment.
Which says?
That a well-regulated militia being necessary for the defense of the state, the people's rights to bear arms. This has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. Now just look at those words. There are only 3 lines to that amendment. A well-regulated militia. If the militia, which was going to be the state army, was going to be well-regulated, why shouldn't 16 and 17 and 18 or any other age persons be regulated in the use of arms, the way an automobile is regulated?
He was the conservative Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, appointed by Nixon with the intent of moving the court more so to a conservative standard. But this particular conservative understood the interplay of profit and gun rights. He knew there was a fraud. I'm going to expose part of that fraud during this segment, but keep this in mind. There was a time, ladies and gentlemen, when Democrats and Republicans were basically saying the same thing as it relates to gun rights. We need common sense gun reform legislation while maintaining a person's right to bear arms. There was a balance. That balance has evaporated. There's more. MSNBC Lawrence O'Donnell turned back the clock by airing that video you just saw of former Supreme Court Justice Warren Burger. And this was his criticism of the Second Amendment, but it was more than that. And I'll get into it in a moment. He was also talking about money. On Monday, a shooter gunned down 6 people, as you know, at a school in Nashville. 3 of the victims were children, all 9 years of age, and all dead. The rampage has spawned the usual demands for gun control from Democrats and the calls to fortify schools from Republicans. During his show on Tuesday, O'Donnell stated the political divide on guns was not always so wide. The quote is, there was a time when Republicans were no more in favor of gun rights than Democrats were, he said. But then Republican campaign pollsters found the sliver of the electorate that cares obsessively about guns and added them to the sliver of the electorate that cares obsessively about stopping all abortions and added them to the electorate that hates taxes and liberals. And that became their only formula to win elections. O'Donnell invoked Burger, a Republican tapped by President Richard Nixon to become Chief Justice in 1969. Burger served until retiring 1986. Now, I'm going to show you another video of what I call a feckless politician. This is an elected leader who is elected to solve problems out of Tennessee. Here it is.
3 precious little kids lost their lives, and I believe 3 adults, I believe it's, and the shooter, of course, lost their life too. So it's a horrible, horrible situation, and we're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals, and my daddy fought in the Second World War, fought in the Pacific, fought the Japanese, and he told me, he said, buddy, he said, if somebody wants to take you out and doesn't mind losing their life, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about it.
Isn't that something? Tim, the representative from Tennessee, he says, hey, my daddy told me that if somebody wants to get you, they're going to get you. I'm paraphrasing. So, sir, why are you an elected representative? If policies and laws, statutory code, punishment, restrictions, regulation, if these things do not work, why did you seek a position that put those very dynamics in place? Here's the reason. He's simply giving lip service. He's gaslighting. Remember, this is part of the same group who decided to make thousands of laws based on a lie about election manipulation. They know it's a lie. They have said it is a lie. They have texted each other, it is a lie, but it did not stop them from creating legislation around the lie. This is the truth. Children are dying. Access to guns is insane in this country. And as the former Republican Chief Justice put it, it's a damn fraud. 100% down the middle. Fraud. As a matter of fact, look at the Constitution. It is not a protection of an individual right in the first place. That became an interpretation a few decades ago by the U.S. Supreme Court. Also, if your right to bear arms is absolute, why is it that every state has an age-in qualifier? For example, you have freedom of speech. That freedom of speech is absolute, but there's regulations statutorily. If you misuse it, if you engage in criminal activity, or if you utilize it to maliciously lie on someone else, the government can penalize you. Yes, that's how it works. Every right has a responsibility. Speech, your freedom of speech is a right. That freedom has common sense responsibility. Guns, once again, your right to bear arms, codified in the Constitution. But with right comes responsibility. Nobody calls the responsibility to not utilize your speech criminally speech control. So why would we call it gun control? Here's the crux of it. Let's put it up. According to a public policy polling survey, 83% of gun owners support expanded background checks on sales of all firearms. That includes 72% of NRA members, National Rifle Association members. As a result, it would seem strange that the NRA has not come out in full support of universal background checks, but it makes sense when you place in proper context what the former Chief Justice said, what O'Donnell said, and what I'm saying today. The vast majority of members of the NRA are for universal background checks. The vast majority of gun owners are for universal background checks. The vast majority of Americans in general, over 90%, are for universal background checks. Who's against it? The gun manufacturer. They are against it. So what happened? There is no universal background check for all firearms. It is a fraud. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
You know, I love that you brought up those numbers, because that was the first thing I was thinking of when you talked about the sliver, because that is exactly who the NRA is appealing to with their claims. They're going to take your guns. It's that tiny little sliver that will believe anything you feed them. The majority of gun owners, as you pointed out, majority of NRA members, majority of average Americans, there is no divide. We're all in agreement that we need to have common sense gun reforms. The only place where this is actually a debate is in Congress.
Yep.
That it's, you know, the same with the issue of climate change. You know, everybody says, yeah, let's do something. The debate, the divisions only actually exist in DC, because the money flowing into that city, flowing to those politicians, is enough to ignore the will of 80% of the public. That is how much they have sold out this country for $1 million here, $1 million there. You know, 300 million people are worth less than $1 million to these Republicans that are arguing that, nope, we can't touch it. They're going to kill you anyway, as the lawmaker said. So, yeah, I guess you just got to accept it. They sold us out for pennies per person.
There you go. All right, we will bring updates as they develop.